welcome everyone to back to another episode of the Protect the Dream Project. Today I started off with my first hit of chocolate covered almonds because feeling a little bit nervous. However, chocolate covered almonds usually does the thing. So today, we've got a really good guest from you coming all the way from England. But first of all, let me tell you about what the Protect the Dream Project is. The goal of the Protect the Dream Project is really to provide you with a resource to help you move forward, to give you the tools and to do those things you always thought about, to inspire you, to encourage you, to help you protect the dream. But along the way, we also want to help you do some practical things and talk about things like, life insurance and retirement and investing for a rainy day and, the stuff people don't really want to deal with, but they're practical and they're important. And they're part of the whole dream building and dream protection process. Now, just to be honest with you, I had a little problem getting started on Facebook this morning. So I hope Facebook people, you are there. Otherwise, go to LinkedIn and you'll find me. Just search for Mark DeLeon Advisor. We are live on LinkedIn as well. We'll see what happens when it's all done. But let's get into this. So today our guest is all the way from England. Her name is H. Michelle Johnson. And just for a little transparency, I've known H. Michelle Johnson for a good portion of my life. She is a relative of a relative. So let's bring H. Michelle Johnson in and say hello to her. H. Michelle Johnson, how are you?
Hello, Mark. I'm good. Thank you.
Good to see you. You're back with us now. Just to let everybody in on a little secret, this lady's been traveling. She was out in the sunshine while I was shoveling snow. Don't appreciate it, but that's okay. We'll deal with it. We'll deal. So H. Michelle Johnson has written a book. Now, I've been saying it's a new book, but I've been wrong. It's not a new book. It's actually her first book. And it took me a little while to purchase it. I don't know why, but when I did purchase it finally, I apologize. When I did purchase it finally, let me tell you something, people. I told her yesterday in our tech check that, and please don't mistake what I'm about to say, because some people say, hey, that's a little violent. But I said to her, I ought to slap you for this book. What I meant that in a good, well, I guess there's no good way to say that, is there? However, we're going to get to the book in a minute. H. Michelle Johnson, please tell us about your book, Do Great Exploits.
Tell us about the book. Okay, well, before I tell you about the book per se, I just want to say thank you so much, Mark, for your very, very kind invitation to come onto your webcast. I think it's brilliant that you started this up, and the world needs it, because people always need a bit of motivation, a bit of inspiration to keep moving forward on their journey. And so thank you very much. And yes, even though you kind of, put me out there as a relative of a relative, I consider you a relative directly. So, anyway, and yes, we have known each other since childhood, really. So it's just wonderful to see you how you evolved over the years, and now with this podcast. So all fantastic. So this book, as you quite rightly
wait. Mm-hmm. Tell the people about yourself first.
Okay.
We'll get to the book.
Well, I was sure. So briefly, I was born in Trinidad and left Trinidad when I was 15 years old. I then lived in Canada for 6 years, and then I moved to the United Kingdom, specifically London, England, at age 21, 32 or something years ago. So I've kind of adversely told you my age there. And, my professional background is pretty varied. I've done teaching, I trained as a nurse, an adult nurse. I've done sort of higher education, went on to do various degrees over here. But I suppose the constant throughout my whole journey and process has been the writing, for me. And so since my early childhood, I have been a writer and have always wanted to write and publish books and so on. Um, and so I also want to say that I really love the title of this webcast, Protect the Dream, because if you're asking me, you asked me about the book before, and in fact about a little bit about myself. And, the Protect the Dream project is really about me. That's what I'm about. It's about, I'm very keen to motivate and inspire people to pursue purpose, to pursue goals, which we also refer to as dreams. And I suppose I always hesitate to use the word dreams because dreams does, for some people, it kind of sounds a bit wishy-washy, or it sounds a bit unattainable or impossible. But many dreams are actually quite possible and within reach. But they're not necessarily easy to always fulfill. And that's the issue. It's not that they're so impossible. It's just that are we really prepared to do what we need to do to actually achieve the dream, to achieve the goals? And these dreams don't have to be some big fantabulous thing. They should be, in fact, aligned with every aspect of our lives. And if we're married, then we should have a dream for our marriage. If we are parents, we should have a dream for parenting for our children and the like. So the book is about that. It's about kind of waking many people up to the fact that we are here for a purpose. You're here for a purpose. You're not here for no reason. You are here for a clear and distinct reason. That's why you were created and put on this planet, and or a set of reasons, a set of purposes. And but the thing is, a lot of those purposes and those dreams don't come about by accident. They come about by intention. And I think that's where a lot of things, people disconnect a little bit because they don't realize that you have to be intentional about pursuing your dreams. So I don't want to say everything I need to say in answer to this one question, tell you about myself. So I'll stop there. So that's me. I'm about motivating people, encouraging people. I'm also a trained coach, a life coach. And the book is about that, what I just described very briefly.
So the book's called Do Great Exploits, right?
Yes.
What is a great exploit? Explain that to me. What would you call a great exploit?
Well, an exploit, really the phrase great exploit came from what I refer to as the wisest book ever written, i.e. the Bible. So I come from a Christian background. It's the wisest book ever written. And that's where the phrase do great exploits actually comes from. And so there's a call to exploits. And so as I was saying before, we're not here to do nothing with our lives. We're here to do many things with our lives, to do various things with our lives. And really it's about how we make a difference while we're here. How do we make our lives count while we're here? Count for something good, something positive. What are we doing to impact our world, our families, our communities, our world at large, positively through our lives? And so an exploit really is about that. It's about the achievements, the things that we accomplish. It's about the goals and the dreams that we have and being able to achieve and accomplish them. So that's the exploit, is actually achieving whatever you set out to achieve. And so when you're talking about great, we know that great means something out of the ordinary, something that's a bit extraordinary. And that's what great is really. And so when we put great and exploit together, it's about, almost, it's really about distinguishing oneself, doing really well at something, doing really well at having an impact, doing really well at fulfilling the purpose that you had intended to fulfill, that you set out to fulfill. So, for example, and as I said, I don't want to make it always sound like it's some big thing like, say, setting up Microsoft or Apple, or coming up with some idea that's actually going to revolutionize the way we travel or the way we communicate or whatever. It could be something like that, yes. But it also is about more foundational stuff around the roles that we play. Whether we do great exploits as parents, as a father or as a mother. We do great exploits in our marriage. And I'm talking about having a vision and a dream for that role as a parent, or as a friend, or as a policeman or a fireman or whatever it is, and just this excelling at that, becoming excellent at it, and being able to function well, um, and just, yeah. So that's the exploit, is just achieving what you're supposed to be achieving where you are. Does that make sense? I can't hear you for some reason.
That makes perfect sense to me. I got to remember to press that button. So, what transpired in your life? What kind of brought you to the point where you said, I got all this stuff in my head. I really need to put it down on paper, because it's something I think that is worth sharing with others. I mean, what brought you into your great exploit, should I say?
Well, I think it's a fair question, but for me, I guess it was more of a journey than any one sort of episode or incident or circumstance that brought me to the point of writing this book. It's been a journey. So, as I said, I wanted to write since my childhood, and various teachers along the way kind of always alluded to the fact that I wrote really well. My essays were really well written. I had a clear writing style, or a very engaging way of putting my points over, things like that. So I got a lot of affirmation and validation around that gift, that talent. And so I knew that as I got older that I would definitely publish. The question, I suppose, then is, why publish in this genre, which is self-help, motivational, inspirational? And the reason is that, from sort of my teenage years, I just was exposed by one of my aunts, in fact, to people like Les Brown and Miles Monroe, and a number of others. And then as I grew older, I started to read John C. Maxwell, who's the internationally renowned leadership guru. And then since the creation of YouTube and that, you just go on there, there's so many motivational speakers. And I just really, in my teens and in my early 20s, 30s, right through really, and well into my 40s, in fact, I religiously listened to these men and women, men mainly, speaking on YouTube, or read their books, digested their books. I've got something like about 27 John C. Maxwell books, and I've actually read all of them. And so that was what was in my system. And one of the well-known pieces of advice for writers is that you should write about what you know. So then it made sense for me to then start writing along this line, because I had just studied so much in it, really. So yeah, that's why it's successful.
I found myself in the last little while. There's a gentleman online that I'm hoping at some point, he's on my interview list. So let's see. His name is Billy Alsbrook. And Billy Alsbrook, I don't know if you've heard of Billy Alsbrook, but he puts out some really great motivational stuff. If it's his stuff is more video based, and if you haven't, when you're finished listening to him, if you're not moved to do something, then there's something wrong with you, So, but yeah, so if you ever get a chance, that's my suggestion to you, Billy Alsbrook. Yeah. So, what were you hoping to achieve with this book? I mean, were you hoping to get something off your chest, or were you hoping to, make a difference for somebody, or was it more of a, some people write for more of a cathartic experience. What were you hoping to achieve?
Yeah, so that's a good question, actually, because having said what I just did about the journey and nothing specific catalyzing me into writing this first book, I was going through a difficult phase of my life, as it happens, when I wrote this book. And this book really, looking back, I realized that this book became the kind of compass for me as well, personally, to navigate my way through that phase of my life. And so I'm hoping that the book could provide that same thing for its readers, to be a compass in terms of helping people to develop an in-depth understanding of purpose, and the fact that they have purpose, and that there are particular steps that you need to follow in order to walk out your purpose, fulfill a vision, fulfill a dream, and that in fact there are many obstacles in your path between your waking up to the fact that you have a purpose and waking up to the fact or designing a vision, if you like, and then fulfilling it. There's a lot that it's almost unnatural because it's almost you have to defy gravity to do it because gravity, the default is passivity. It's for us to actually do nothing. And so, and there are many factors externally as well as internally that provide that um, obstructiveness to us moving forward in our purpose and in our dream. So externally, it could be things that have been said to us. It could be things that we see portrayed about certain people in the media or whatever it is, or something that a teacher said or a parent said or something, or a mistake that happened, and you already are in that place where you think I can't do it because my teacher said that I would amount to nothing, or I tried before and I failed and I made a mistake and I failed, so I definitely can't do it. So that's why you go back to this default of being passive or being fearful, and so that's an example of an obstacle. And so it's about the hope that I have for this book is that people would be inspired, people would be motivated, that this whole process would be demystified, so that people can clearly understand the kind of steps in the process, and also be reassured that it's not just hard for them individually, it's hard for everybody who wants to do something with their lives. It's hard for everybody who wants to be great experts, hard for everybody who wants to do something extraordinary out of the usual, hard for anybody who wants to be above average. Let's put it that way. And in that, you should gain courage, because I think that was one of my biggest obstacles, is the sense that, wow, writing is really hard, even though I love doing it. It's hard. But then you read and you realize that it was John C. Maxwell, in fact, who wrote in one of his books that it took him a year to write his first book, and it was rubbish. And when you have John C. Maxwell, when you read 20 of his books, you think this guy's a superstar, and he's saying that at the outset it was hard. It tells you that, okay, so it's not me personally, it's not God or whoever doing this to me personally saying you can't do it. It's just the way it is. And since other people were able to overcome those difficulties and those obstacles, then you can as well. You can learn the skills that are needed to overcome and keep moving forward until you accomplish what you need to accomplish. And I have to say that my hope in terms of inspiring and motivating people, and that's the other thing, activating. That's the big thing that I learned about this book after publishing it, is how it activates people. Because I've got various testimonials from people who read it, who have come back to me and given examples of how literally reading the book, they set up charities, or literally having read the book, they decided, they'd suffered too long, languishing too long in a job they hated, and just got up and started looking for another one and got the coaching they needed, and then they got a better job. So there's many testimonies, and I'm really pleased about that. That's the hope that I had for the book, and that's the hope that's been realized, is the action. Take action. Take action.
Well, I must
read about it or read about it. Take action.
I must say I've been activated by this book. I really, really have.
Yeah.
When did you get so smart? I mean, when did you get so? What is the word I'm looking for? Observant. Long way from.
Well, that's the thing. I do reflect on my family's perception of me and who I really am, and actually, they are really far removed by and large, I have to say. Maybe it's because I joke around a lot, or I think a lot. I'm actually a really quiet person by nature. I'm an introvert, an extreme introvert. You see your face. And even my friends would tell you, Michelle, you always say that, but you're not an introvert. The truth is I am. So I just learned how to be extroverted, or I can be extroverted when I need to be in a given situation and social circumstance. And when you need to be, because you can't just be internally processing everything you see all the time. You need to be able to communicate and connect with others. But I think I've always been observant. Which is why I've got such detailed memories of early childhood experiences. That even my sister would say, "Oh gosh, did that really happen?" Or "Wow, I didn't realize that was happening." Well, I could give you a detailed account of things that were going on, and that's because I have always been observant. I have always I think I'm like a sponge. Even when I'm not actively thinking I'm observing things, I am seeing what's going on. And you know what made me learn that about myself, oddly enough? It was watching, I used to be a fan of Murder She Wrote, Jessica Fletcher, that, that novelist,
That
who
woman,
actually was a great detective. And that's because as a writer, that's what you do is you sit and you just observe and you're seeing things and details that perhaps the average person who might not be picking up on. You know, that's how she manages to solve mysteries, just because she happens to be in a room or she happens to hear a conversation and she's just receiving all of it. And then eventually she can work it out and think, oh, wow, that's the guy who did this, who committed the murder.
I often
So I think
wondered why.
writers are observant people.
I often wonder why they never arrested her. I
Why
often
would
wonder
they arrest her?
because
She's never committed a crime.
what are you sure? How come she always knew? I mean, come on.
She always knew, but she was never the person, though. She was never the one who was looking at it. She was definitely a busybody. I'm not a busybody in that sense, up in people's business, but I do see people's business unfolding before my very eyes. And then I take some of that away and I reflect on it and just think it through, or, you know, in light of the world, in light of the word of God, and just try to understand things. And then it comes out in what I write.
So I'm going to grab my book here. Now, for those who've been watching my promos the last little while, this is my copy of the book. So I hope it's not backwards, but if it is, that's okay. And here's what I have done with this book. So I'm going to go through a couple of things here, and we're going to kind of get some thoughts about them, because there's some things that have really stood out to me. Now, I should preface this by telling everyone that my background is entrepreneurship. I've been self-employed since I was about 18 years old, and let me tell you, the life of a self-employed person is worse, or rather, let me not use the word worse. Let me use the word is as interesting as a roller coaster at Canada's Wonderland. And there are days.
It takes serious grit. It really does. It really takes grit. Yeah.
And there are days, let me tell you, where I've thought this just doesn't make any sense. Now, in reading this book, I saw a lot of the thoughts that ran through my head. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, it's not only me, you know, because sometimes you think you're out there by yourself. So let's kind of hang on. Let's go to the first one here. The first one I've got is, it says, people who do exploits always have the end in mind before they take action. Now that is a big, in my opinion, a very big statement. It's one sentence. But I find that people, particularly people who go into business for themselves, are, a friend of mine said to me the other day, you know, my dad always thought you were really a dreamer. But that's really part of it. You know, the dream, seeing what the end of seeing the prize, and then figuring out the steps coming back to you, you know. I still kind of operate that way. You talk about business planning, you talk about these things, but most people approach from a different point of view. They don't necessarily approach it with that end, at least not a full vision of what the end looks like, and they kind of find it hard to fill in the pieces. You know, can you talk to that a little bit? The idea of the dream.
Absolutely. Yeah, having the end in mind. Yeah, and as you say quite rightly, you might start off a journey with not necessarily having the end um, fully formed in your head, but you should have a good, fair idea of what that end should be. If you don't know, then how do you know you're going in the right direction? How do you know you're doing the right things? How do you know you're speaking to the right people, taking the right steps? If you don't know what the end, what it is you're trying to achieve, and granted, and that's why I say it doesn't have to be perfectly formed, but you have to have a pretty good idea about it. Because in fact, as you step forward and you start talking to people and you start doing your research and you start surveying the market or understanding the market and things like that, your that end picture then becomes more and more formed because you are more and more educated about it. Yeah. So it's very important to have that vision. So I gave an example, I think of Bill Gates in there that just comes to mind. Microsoft, their vision was to have a computer in every household by some year, say 2015, for example. Um, and at the time that vision was written for Microsoft, it was just the few very, very wealthy who had access to computers. And in fact, it started off with computers being the size of rooms. Computers, the CPU of a computer was humongous, right? I mean, now we've got it in chips, but and so to have a vision that was almost so ridiculous at the time that we were going to have a computer in X households or the most majority of households by a certain year was ludicrous. But here we are today. Is that not the case? Do we not have a computer in practically every household? Now, we are observing in the UK, as with any country really, there's something called digital poverty. So we're not saying that everybody has a computer, but certainly by and large, a huge proportion and percentage of the population will have one device in the household that they can access. So in fact, Microsoft have fulfilled their vision, haven't they? But without that vision, what would they have done? They might have just been making computers, but that's it. Or or might have gotten sidetracked very easily. So that's the other beauty of knowing the end from the beginning, of having a vision, because it also keeps you focused on that goal. So you're not as easily distracted. So, for example, if they didn't have a vision to have X percentage of computers around in homes, it might be that they started off making computers, but then something else came along, maybe CDs or something like that, and they suddenly thought, "Oh, look at these shiny items. Let's try that instead." Or let's try this instead, or let's do that instead. So having a vision, i.e., the end in sight, the end in mind, keeps you on course, keeps you on track. It hones your skills and abilities because then you become very focused and concentrated on learning what you need to learn and doing what you need to do to get to that end. You're also less likely to be distracted by things that do not feed into the end goal. And so that then makes it more likely that you will move towards that end goal and succeed or meet that goal. So that's what having the end in mind is about. And it's about starting from the end. And as you just said, looking at the steps that you need to take between where you are and where you want to be. And, as I said, I'm a coach, and that's the definition of coaching, is helping people to move from where they are to where they want to be. So the first thing you start talking to when you have a new client is about what is it that you want to achieve? Where is it you want to be? What is it you're looking at, thinking of, hoping for? And then we can work together to help you to get there, to achieve that. Otherwise, you just, as we say over here, very crudely, pissing in the wind.
We'll go with that. So where there is no vision, the people perish.
People perish.
Right? And there's a lot of truth to that.
And there's a lot of truth in that. And the other scriptural thing, and I didn't want to make it too, because I'm assuming we have a wide audience who may not have our spiritual
base
or be aligned to our spirituality. But what I want to say is, from our perspective, that's a godly thing, because God Himself says, "I know the end from the beginning." So He doesn't even set off to do anything without knowing what it is He wants to achieve in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so the next line that caught my attention, and again, I got a bunch of them here. It's really a question that you asked. Are you posing as something you are not? Are you avoiding who you are called to be because you have accepted an identity that is not yours? A lot of power in that statement, Michelle. Lots of power in that statement. And it makes you wonder. The power, I think, from my perspective, is that you see a lot of people getting engaged in things that they may not necessarily be suited for. Or they fall into things, and I have this experience, and so, to a certain extent, I think I might be experiencing right now. But they have this experience where they simply, okay, I'm here, I'm just going to kind of roll with it or move forward with it, but that's not where they really want to be, right? So, but yet, people will tell you, fake it till you make it, right? And to a certain extent, there's some truth in that as well, too. So I'm going to ask you to maybe speak to this idea about being something that you're, or posing as something as you are not.
Yeah. So I don't think that the two statements are linked at all. The statement of posing as something that you're not, I don't see that as linked to fake it till you make it. Those are two different things in my mind. So to fake it till you make it is about, I see that anyway as, okay, so before I published my first article or before I published my first book, I was, I told people I was a writer. So, so to me, you're almost faking it till you make it, till you publish yourself as a writer. And there's nothing wrong with that. But with regards to the first statement, which is in my book around, are you posing as something that you're not? That is fundamental. So having said that, though, what I do want to acknowledge, because I've had to do it myself, okay, so we often sometimes find ourselves in roles that we wouldn't necessarily have chosen for ourselves, or we just keep doing because we've got to pay the bills, right? So I didn't have a family set up with a trust fund where I could not work and just dedicate my time to writing. I would have loved that. But that wasn't the case. So you do have to sometimes do jobs or types of work, get engaged in stuff that you don't, it's not really you, but you do it out of necessity. And that's respectable. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. We have responsibilities and we need to meet those responsibilities, especially if you are a parent or have a family structure that's dependent on you. So so we're talking about supposing. So all I wanted to say with that really is that we have a lot of people find themselves, however, stuck in roles and jobs that what I just described, it's not really them. It's not really what they want to do. They know they've got talent or a gift in a different aspect of life, and they would really love to be able to pursue that. So all that statement is saying to them is not that you should tuck in your livelihood, but that you should not remain passive about the other thing that you're passionate about. That you should take steps to still try and fulfill that other thing that is burning on the inside of you. And I'm sure I've written in the book around the sort of second section around releasing your potential and that what it would require of you is that you work really hard. So you might, and I wrote the book in that sense, but I was doing my 9 to 5, but I wanted to be a writer. So at one stage of writing that book, I was getting up at 4 a.m. to write before I got dressed to go to work. And in the evenings after work, writing as well. I got a job that was had a 2-hour commute one way. Can you imagine 2-hour commute? So in that sense, then I stopped doing the 4 o'clock, waking up 4 o'clock thing. And then I decided, fortunately, I was sitting down for the whole journey. So that was the space in which I wrote, that 2 hours to work in the morning. And to be honest, Lyndon, sometimes coming out at Surbiton Station in Kingston, South London, it was 2 hours, but it really felt like 5 minutes. Like I would be like, oh my God, I'm here already. Because I was so sucked in and in my flow for that time, that the time just felt like 5 minutes. And even coming back from Kingston, instead of coming straight back up to Northwest London, I would stop off at the South Bank, because there's lots. The South Bank is where the National Theatre, lots of arts. It's an arty area basically, and there's lots of spaces there. So I would stop off there at Waterloo and go into South Bank Theatre, Festival Hall, or into National Theatre, and just find a space to sit down with my iPad, and I would write. So sometimes till 9 in the evening or so, I would write. Get there 6:30, and write through to 8 or 8:30, 9 o'clock, and then get up and make the rest of the journey home. And so what I'm saying there is that I was in a role that really wasn't my first love. And so to have stayed in that, it would be me posing as something that I wasn't. But I decided that, okay, for as long as I might have to pose in this role, I'm still going to pursue my passion of who I really am. And I'm going to have to make the sacrifice in order to do that. And so that is another key aspect of doing great exploits. That sometimes exploits, in fact, most times, especially if you're talking about great ones, require you to step outside of the lines and start coloring and painting outside of the lines and doing what you want. So there's another great book by Malcolm Gladwell called Outliers, and I really do recommend that book. It's a good read, and what he said in that book is, when you look at people who have achieved above average, not just above average, but excellence, distinguished themselves in their field, whether it's in music or science or athletics or whatever it is, what you find across the board as a common theme is them doing that craft 9, 10, 11 hours a day. If you're playing the violin, 11 hours of practice a day. If you're sprinting, if you're running, I make a lot of, I allude a lot to sportsmen and women because that's what they do. When you talk about Usain Bolt, he doesn't win, he doesn't break world records running some 100-meter race in 9 point whatever seconds. He himself, there's a quote that is floating around social media that he spent 4 years training to run that 9 point whatever second race. You understand? So people don't run, you don't get to the end game unless you pay a price.
The thought of overnight success. Oh, I think
a little bit frozen, but
there we go.
Well, because I understood, I started to learn and understand that whatever you want to create, so whatever you want to achieve and do, you have to put in the time.
No, I think we're losing you.
You have to put in the hard work. Yeah, I can see the connection is unstable.
Yep, hang in there a bit.
There was another. Brian Tracy said that
good Canadian.
Success demands payment up front. So Brian Tracy is another motivational speaker. Success. Oh dear.
Are we losing you?
Frozen there.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. We got you back. We got you back.
Front. I don't know if I'm still. Yeah.
Yeah. You're good. You're good on our end. Yeah. So the next line that I want to ask you about, well, that caught me, that caught my eye, is time is lost when you're in the wrong place. As time passes, peace, satisfaction, and joy slowly erode. That is such a powerful statement to me. I think about the number of people that, and this is going back to our just the conversation we just had, the number of people who feel stuck, and they want to do something, but they can't necessarily find that jumping off point, or they're afraid to make that step. And they talk about it and they talk about it and they talk about it and they talk about it. But that for whatever reason, you can't jump. That's what Steve Harvey says. You got to jump. But look, I hate heights. I hate heights immensely for one of two reasons. One, I don't like looking over the edge. And two, when you get there, that's when you start thinking, well, maybe I should jump. But it scares the death out of me. But that's what I think this is talking about. Fear.
It's everybody. Yeah. And so there's a whole chapter in there titled People Who Do Great Exploits Befriend Their Fears. And I give lots of examples and principles around befriending your fear. And as you've chosen to talk about this idea of getting to the edge of a cliff and jumping off, one of the examples in there that I remember, one of the illustrations was the way young eagles, baby eaglets, learn to fly. And it's because mom literally pushes them. She kicks them out. And, eagles make their nests on cliffs generally. So she literally pushes them off the cliff. And, of course, when you're falling from a cliff, you're petrified. But eventually what happens is these eaglets, because that's their nature is to fly, they start flapping their wings and eventually they catch themselves before they hit the ground and then they're soaring. So befriending your fears is about recognizing, number one, I suppose it's about calculated risk. So I'm not telling anybody to go and jump off a cliff right now, literally, yeah. What I'm saying is you've got to take calculated risks. And yes, you might fall or you will fall for a bit, but you will most probably learn to fly in that process. And even if you did fall, what you need to do is see it, frame it in a growth mindset approach, which means that you will learn. You're going to learn what happened, learn what caused you to fail this time so that you don't repeat it next time. As opposed to a fixed mindset where you think, okay, I failed and that's it. I failed because I'm a failure. You don't fail because you're a failure. You fail because something went wrong. You hadn't prepared enough, or you didn't cater for that, or you didn't anticipate something. And next time you can learn how to do it better so that you're less likely to fail next time. So there's a lot of principles and strategies in that chapter for overcoming fears. And one of the things is looking at the fear itself, and instead of turning away from it and closing your eyes in horror, just look at it and what is it I'm afraid of? Well, public speaking, I used to be petrified. So you and I went to the same high school, and you would not believe it, or maybe you would, but I remember we had a psychology teacher who was sympathetic towards my plight, but that didn't stop her from calling me up to do book reports or whatever else. And our literature teacher, he always had me up in the front of this class talking as well. But doing that, they had no idea how traumatized I was. Like, I used to get physical pain. I don't know, my whole nervous system. I used to feel like electricity was like lightning running. I felt like it was a panic attack. And, I couldn't breathe. My voice was trembling and everything. Now I go out and I speak to crowds. I go out and I speak spontaneously to groups. Even when I wasn't there to speak, somebody who I know might see me in the audience, and then they will say, do you want to come up and say something? And I have to go up and do that. And I do it comfortably, relatively at ease. And that's because you learn from your mistakes. And you recognize that even if you fumbled a bit, you can learn to manage some of that beforehand. So it could be that, you learn some sound bites, you learn your own story well enough so that you can tell it off the cuff, as it were. So you're not on the stage, trying to work out what to say next. You can tell your story because you practice it. That's the other big thing, is rehearsing what you have to say. I'm just using that as an example of that you can overcome these fears by looking at what the fear is, knowing what it is. For me, it was public speaking. And what happens when I'm public speaking? Well, those are the things. Physically, I feel this way. Emotionally, I feel this way. But what can I do about it? Well, I could prepare beforehand. literally rehearse it over and over and over again before I go up and say. Maybe I could take some cue cards with me that I could keep glancing at. And in fact, over time, as you build your confidence, you won't need the cue cards anymore, or you won't be feeling that nervous anymore. And so that's what I mean by that's an example of overcoming, of how you deal with the fear, as opposed to letting the fear shut you down so you never speak in public, which then you can't fulfill your purpose, whatever it might be, or related to that, or that and then you beat yourself up, which makes it even harder for you to try. So another aspect of the book, I know, one of the things about, there's many things in the book really, but there's a chapter on how you prepare, building your confidence. There's a chapter on confidence, building confidence, and there's stages to that.
That's actually leads into my next question. So I'm actually going to skip a couple of stuff. So, because there's so much here. So, I encourage everyone to get their own copy of this book. So I'm going to skip ahead a bit because I want to hit two more items. Yeah, two more items. So to what you were just saying, the next thing that I have highlighted and circled off and all is recognition of your difference is recognition of your worth. Is understanding that you have something valuable and useful to offer others. And I think for myself personally, I kind of fall down in this department. I find it very easy to promote others and to see value that other people are offering. I find it very difficult to promote myself. My wife tells me I'm a bit of a talker sometimes, but okay, great. But I don't necessarily talk about me, So I completely get this. And this really kind of falls into what you were just saying about self-worth, right?
So what was just read the quote again for me.
Recognition of your difference is recognition of your worth. It is the understanding that you have something valuable and useful to offer others.
Yeah. Okay. So absolutely. So that's a very generic principle. And it could include what you said in terms of promoting oneself. But it's much broader than that, more generic than that. So immediately a friend of a friend springs to my mind. And this guy is brilliant. He is a mathematician. He's the head of department at one of the big universities in the UK. And I only know him because he has a Trinidadian wife, right? So I met him through his wife. But he is a mathematician. And if you see him in social settings, he's actually really quite awkward. Okay, quite awkward. As sometimes some of these types are, because their brain is just wired in a particular way, right? And so that is not, so he wouldn't promote himself. In fact, his wife will just prop him up in a corner. And as long as she keeps bringing him the booze over the night, he's happy to just sit there and let all the Trinis carry on, right? And he will smile and he'll be warm, but he's not out there talking and chatting. He's the social butterfly. But that doesn't mean he doesn't know his difference or his worth. His difference as a mathematician, as a brilliant scholar, has seen him really go far in his career and impact many hundreds, maybe thousands of students who he has taught and mentored. So that's what that really means. It's about recognizing your gift and your talent, but even on a deeper level than that, because again, we can make this gift and talent and the abilities the thing, but it's more than that. It's about our intrinsic worth as human beings. Our intrinsic worth as human beings, as individuals created in the image of God, as having particular gifts and talents. Now, some of the gifts are common among us, but the thing is, as I say in the book, you bring your gift uniquely because your personality, you bring it, it's all filtered through your personality, through your life experiences, through your how well you hone the gift and the talent and all that. And that is what makes it unique, even though you and I might both be writers. Okay. So I have my own voice as a writer. Someone else has a different voice as a writer. We're bringing our talents and our gifts, but my worth is about who I am, and the recognition that every human being has got immeasurable worth and value. And we as individuals need to get into contact and connect with that worth as people, as an individual, because that's where the confidence comes from as well. That's all part of building the confidence, because in fact, once you understand that you are worth something, and that you then shift into the I am worthy to exploit the talents and the gifts that I have been endowed with. And in fact, it's an imperative that I do. I have a call, in fact, to bring it. This gift and this talent, this ability I've got, these experiences I have been put on this earth to bring that to the table. So that is worth something, whether Mr. Man down the road doesn't think so, or Mrs. Woman up the road doesn't think so. Doesn't matter what they think. My worth is real.
That's right.
And once you get that in your brain, in your heart, and believe it, then that is where your confidence and your voice in this world comes from. And you can then speak with a certain authoritativeness, a certain, maybe authoritativeness is the word. But people then listen, because actually, there's a integrity flowing from the inside to the out. So you're not out there pretending to be worth it. You actually are worth it. You believe that you're worth it, and so then it flows out. You know what I mean?
So here we've come kind of full circle to what we talked about much earlier on about being something that you may not necessarily be, right? And developing self-worth.
So the authentic self is key. The authentic self, finding your authentic self. And there are many things in life, and I've gone through the process myself, where you are just conditioned or raised or whatever it is. I'm not blaming parents for everything, but through society, you just come up through the system thinking you have to be somebody else.
Yeah. The doctor, the lawyer, the government employee,
be the popular
right?
one, or you got to be the doctor, or you got to be the whatever.
Yeah.
But it's about finding and connecting with your authentic self.
Yeah.
And so that's again an integral part of an important part of developing self-confidence. You can't be confident about yourself when you're not even sure about who you are, or when you know you're something but you're trying to be something else. So you got to put on be comfortable in your skin, get to know yourself. And I'm finding that I'm repeating that quite a bit in my second book, Bouncing Back. There's a whole chapter there on the importance of self-knowledge, knowing yourself, befriending yourself, become your own best friend. Never speak to yourself or say anything to yourself that you would never say to your best friend or your kid who you love.
I think a lot of that.
We do that. I
think a lot of that ends up in your head, and you kind of get stuck there sometimes, and you end up spooling this stuff in your head. The negative thoughts go round and round, and then that erodes the subconscious, the unconscious parts of you. So that's why it's difficult to then stand boldly and confidently, because the foundation isn't stable. And so there is a lot I've written in there about self-talk, because that is the fundamental. That's fundamental. It starts with you. It starts with the individual. In this book, I wrote a phrase around learning to live from the inside out. And that's what I mean. Building up a really strong, sure foundation in terms of your authentic self, your true identity. Recognizing that maybe you're not always able to, live out your gifts or your talents or whatever because of things that I said before, the practical aspect of paying bills and so on. But still finding a congruence, or certainly an integrity, as I say, with you
you have to be really happy with you. You have to find a way to be comfortable with yourself. And that takes a process because, as I say, from birth right through to adulthood, unless you become aware, self-aware, you become what everybody else wants you to be, as opposed to who you really are. And then you need the courage to be who you really are as well, because even the close relatives, other people will reject you because they have an idea of who you should be.
Exactly.
And if you decide, well, actually, that's not who I am, then you get a ton load of crap, really, even from relatives. But you got to learn to live. And so you'll find that, a lot of people who have done great exploits, people who we admire and look up to through history or modern times, whatever, it's a lonely road. It's a road you have to be able to walk alone, because you will find people who can relate to that, who will love you regardless, but they're in the minority. And so you got to recognize sometimes you've got this one person or these two people, and everybody else loves you, but they just don't get it. So oftentimes, to do great things, you have to walk alone.
I agree. And it's usually the people. Quite often, can't say usually. Quite often, it's the people closest to you who don't see it, who can't see the vision, or it's not necessarily they can't see the vision. They see you only as X, whereas you may be X now, but you know you're going to be Y.
Or you evolved. Or you
exactly.
Yeah. And sometimes it's not always because they're wicked, awful people. It could be too. I mean, I've kind of looked back and done a lot of reflecting in my life, and you realize actually, they're just concerned.
Yeah.
They
absolutely.
So you got a solid 9 to 5 and
the roof over your head.
You can keep a roof over your head and food on your table and everything. They're concerned. And
absolutely.
That's often what drives it, as opposed to So then you have the extreme as well for some people where they just do want to control everybody.
I want to talk to you about Miss Valerie Henry. Now, I don't know Miss Valerie Henry, but you talked about Miss Valerie Henry, and that struck a chord with me because it's a good story. So I'm going to kind of give the Cole's Notes. Well, I don't know if you guys have Cole's book, but Cole's Notes version of Miss Valerie Henry. And correct me if I'm wrong. Miss Valerie Henry was your teacher. And at some point, I think you said it at around 16 years of age, you wrote something. And Miss Valerie Henry came and told you, how do you put that here? My English teacher passed back an assignment. She'd given the class a short story. She paused at my desk and said, Miss Johnson, when you become a famous author, make sure you tell everyone Valerie Henry, was your English teacher.
Yeah.
On that day, Miss Henry switched on a light within me that has never gone out. I began to treasure my potential as a writer from that moment forward. I think as parents, or not only as parents, as people who as older people, we have a responsibility to our young people to turn on that light and to encourage them, not beat them up for what they're doing. Maybe they like doing their TikToks, maybe they like doing their whatever, but some of them have an understanding of where they want to be with this stuff. And yes, like we said before, it may be a matter of encouraging them to get a job so they can survive. But, there is a point where nurturing potential, nurturing dreams is important for kids to get them to move forward. And I said, wow, that was, I remember there was a teacher, this is before high school. When I was a kid. Now, I'll be honest with you, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. I'm not. I admit that. But I clearly remember someone telling my mother that this young man will be lucky if he makes it through high school. Now, it sticks through my head. Well, guess what? Just to spite them, I attended the best university in the country, and I made it through, right? But and along the way, and in high school, and again, we went to the same high school, I had teachers there who encouraged me, and that encouragement pushed me forward. And I think we need to be more careful with what we say to our young people. As West Indians, part of our culture is to really jab you and rib you, and it's all in fun. And that's okay, but they need to know that it's all in fun, because some people can take those kind of negative statements a little too
wounding. Those words are wounding.
Yes,
and have a long-lasting impact.
Absolutely.
On them, and actually shape their future, unless the person, as I say, becomes self-aware and starts to reprogram.
Exactly.
And so the interesting thing is, I started to laugh at Valerie Henry, because we both, in fact, is a teacher because it was at that same high school. So there was no Valerie Henry. I've anonymized the person.
Okay, I know who you're speaking of. I know who you're speaking of.
And so she, and that's what she said to me, and I could see her face now. I could see it in my mind right now with her saying that to me, and it has always been. And in fact, I think with Lyndon or Mark, when I had this draft and it was getting published, I did contact you to ask you if you knew where she was, because I did want to dedicate the book to her. I did want to mention her in the book, but I just never. You said you did know how to get in touch with her, in fact, but then I just thought, the time that would take, let me just. Plus, she'd probably want to read it and make sure she's happy, and with her name being put on there. So that's why I decided to just use an alias, basically.
So just to tell you, she is doing well. She is doing well. She's living in Saskatchewan, of all places. So, she was a mentor to me as well too, and she was always around to encourage and to sometimes slap me in the back of the head. So I understand that, and that really stood out to me, and it made me stop and think about my approach to certain things, my approach to what am I doing where young people are concerned. There's a couple of young people that I do try and mentor here. There's a young gentleman who's building a business here in the Toronto area, who's doing very well, and he calls me from time to time to throw his ideas on me, and I'm more than happy to listen to him and give him ideas, and I appreciate that fact that he thinks I'm wise enough. I don't know if I'm wise enough, but he thinks I'm wise enough to offer him a piece of my experience.
Yeah.
So
I think that's awesome, because that's what I like to hear. Let's help the young people out. Why not? If they can learn from us and not make the mistakes, and if they're humble enough to take some of the advice on board or think through some of the stuff you want to share, then why not? And that's what I mean. I just think this whole thing, my whole do it experts bouncing back. My view is, we're not just born to do nothing. We're not just born to get an education, get a job, and then retire and die. Like, I just have an issue with people who do that, where they're not mentoring, they're not reaching out, they're not doing anything to support anybody else, or even by a phone call or anything like that. Like, I just think that is a waste of space, to be honest with you. Sadly, I mean, it sounds terrible for me, or too quite harsh, but that's how I feel. Because I think the whole world could be so much better place if everybody just did a little bit more of good. You know what I mean? There's so many kids out there need mentoring, need a big brother, a father figure, just a phone call, just to say, come on, guy, do this better, or come on, guy, why did you do this, or maybe you should have done it differently. Whereas you're just sitting there at home doing nothing.
So let's
all life experience.
Let's thank you. But I want to quickly touch on your new book, because as I was promoting, saying this book is your new book. It's not your new book. It's your first book. So let's touch on your new book. I haven't read it yet, but tell us a little bit about your new book. What should we expect in your new book, or your current book?
So it's called Bouncing Back. and it's let me try and get it. Oh, I don't know where it is now. But anyway, thank you. Bouncing back, your mental and emotional resilience in the new normal and beyond. And so this is also on Amazon, as is Do Great Exploits. In fact, it is everywhere. Barnes and Noble, all good bookshops, really, where books are sold. And it's Apple, Kindle, all sorts of things. So Bouncing Back, again, it came out last year, and it really addresses resilience. So resilience is the theme, really, of this book. How to build your resilience, how to boost your resilience, how to keep bouncing back when adversity strikes, as it inevitably does. How to keep bouncing back when you fail, or when you get disappointed or let down, or an adverse circumstance comes out of the blue, large or small. And so it gives lots and lots of, I forget, it's like, there are 29, I wouldn't say chapters, they're more like sections in here, because, it's like 1 or 2 pages. But I wanted it to be very easy to read, a quick read, just to boost people's resilience and also to lift people's mood, because last year and the last 2 years, because of COVID, we know what has happened with that huge mental health crisis, with lots of people seeking support for their mental health and well-being. And so this book is really written to address some of that, but also this universal, this classic principle, theme of resilience and how to boost it.
Excellent.
So, yes.
And you said your books are available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all the big bookstores.
And there's an ebook on Apple, and they're on Kindle as well, Kindle version.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you very much, Michelle. Wow, this has been a good conversation. I was so anticipating this conversation. I mean, people must think I was crazy, but you know what? I'm so glad that you took the time to spend with us today. So as we're on the way out, we're kind of closing things down. I encourage everyone to go out and get their copies of Do Great Exploits. And what's the name of the other book?
Bouncing Back.
Bouncing Back. Yes. Okay. And what I also want to
Michelle Johnson.
Yes, H. Michelle
called Bouncing Back on Amazon.
Okay.
But it's H. Michelle Johnson.
H. Michelle Johnson. Okay. Now, I also want to let people know what's coming up in the near future. So on April 1st, we are going to be having as our guest Andrew Smith, because, tax time is coming. May 1st is the tax deadline. Small business owners want to know what they need to do about their taxes, or ideas about their taxes, and how they can deal with it, because tax time for a small business person is a headache. Well, I guess for everybody it's a headache, but there's always so much more to do. Following Andrew, we're going to have David Cohen. So David Cohen is a business coach and also an author. Actually, 3 authors in a row, because I should tell you that Andrew actually just launched a new book, which we will be getting to in the near future. But David Cohen holds a special place in my heart, because it is because of him that I have taken up broadcasting. He kindled a fire that's always been there inside me. So David Cohen will be our guest. I don't have a date for him yet. I think he might be April 15th, but and Andrew's April 1st, but we're still working out those final details. And if you wish to get in contact with me, because one of the things that I do, I'm a life insurance agent. So protecting the dream, as I told you at the outset, protecting the dream doesn't only include being positive and building yourself and motivating yourself, but it also includes taking care of your family and taking care of yourself and preparing yourself for things that may come along that may derail you. So if you wish to get in touch with me, you can, not that one, leave that there. There's my contact information. Feel free to send me an email, or you can connect with me on Facebook and LinkedIn. I'm here to help you any time. Michelle, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And this has been a great conversation. Any parting words? No,
I just want to thank you as well. It has been a great conversation. it's really good to speak and relate with you on this level. As we know, we're family, we've grown up knowing each other and all that. So it's good to have a serious conversation finally with Mark. Um, and I think, yeah, just keep going, keep this webcast going because people are hungry for, we all want to learn from each other
Yep.
and from people who have expertise in different areas.
So
yes, keep going.
we did have a little bit of a
everyone for listening.
we did have a little bit of a technical difficulty, I think, at the beginning. Because I'm really not sure if this went out on Facebook, but if it didn't go on Facebook, it will be posted on Facebook in its entirety for everyone to watch and comment on and throw their 2 cents in. So this was show number 3. So we're slowly working out all the bumps in the roads,
Finding
but
out the wrinkles.
exactly. And on that note, I'm going to fade to black and say thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.